When people asked what you wanted to be when you grow up, what did you say?
I wanted to be an interpreter or translator for the United Nations.
Did you go to school to become a teacher or a principal or something completely different?
I went to Miami University as a Spanish major. I was going to be a foreign language and linguistics major so I could be a translator or interpreter at the United
What is the hardest thing about becoming a principal?
I never wanted to be a principal, which is the kind of the interesting thing about this. I taught the students who were deaf for 17 years, and then I started teaching other students with any kind of language disability, reading comprehension. So where I worked in Hamilton City Schools, we had an influx of students from Mexico, actually. Some that were educated in Mexico and some that were not. So the language barrier was huge. So at the time, they only received like 20 minutes of service a week in regards to their English, the development of English for them. So I started taking them into my classes, and it was one of those things that I kind of broadened what I was doing. So then I decided I wanted to supervise programs in schools, programs for students identified with disabilities, students who were English language learners, like students from different countries. So I went and took a job, which is basically at like central office, they call it. And so I supervised programs for 2 years. And during that process, I worked with a lot of principals and assistant principals in the buildings. There was like 13 buildings in Hamilton. And they said, oh, you have great ideas, but you've never tried to run a building, so how do you know that's going to work? And I thought, well, I took the assistant principal's job here with the goal of going back to being like a director of programs for students. And then I was here 9 months, and the principal left, and they said, oh, guess what you're going to do? And I'm like, oh, that's not a good idea. I really thought that I would get fired.
In your own words, what is a leader?
I think a leader is really a person who kind of really knows themselves, is honest about who they are, and then works with people honestly about who they are. So not somebody who dictates what should happen or what should be done, although there are moments when I do that. Obviously. But I think working with people in a way that makes a difference, whatever that looks like. And it looks very different for different people. But, you have to know who you are first, know yourself. Then my next goal is know the students at the same time knowing the staff. If all three of us kind of know who we are, then we all can be led where we need to go. Whether it's the students leading sometimes, the staff leading sometimes, or me leading sometimes.
What is the hardest part about becoming a leader?
I think the hardest part is making sure that you stay true to yourself. As you move up in any organization, even in a school system, there are other people telling you what to do. But the key to being successful is not doing what others tell you to do, but doing what you know is what you believe in. That's the most difficult part.
What do you hope we take from you after we graduate?
2 things. One, I hope that students realize adults care about them. And the other thing is that find something you love to do and do it. I think that's hugely important.
What makes you stand out from other principals, either in the district or just...
I don't necessarily think I stand out. Sometimes I do because I'm loud. Other times I stand out because I'm outspoken. What makes me stand out? I think for me this isn't a job. I think that might be the difference for some other principals that I've met, not necessarily in our district. For me, this isn't a job. This is part of my life kind of thing. This is what I truly want to be doing.
Who is your biggest enemy?
My biggest enemy. Wow, that is a really hard question. My biggest enemy. Who? I don't think I personally have a biggest enemy. I don't know, maybe I do and I don't know it. I think the biggest enemy, and this may not make sense to you, but I think the biggest enemy I have is sometimes people not doing the right things for kids. That's an enemy to me. That doesn't make sense. If you're a teacher or a principal or a counselor or a superintendent or a parent, it should be the right thing for kids. So I think that. Also, it amazes me, and I find this kind of in the enemy category, how many parents are willing to throw other kids under the bus.
Yeah.
I do not understand that. I think that's horrible in our society. Yet if they're not looking at my kid, then it's okay to say, oh, I can't believe that kid did that. Knowing all teenagers do things that are not the best things in the world. We all do. We all make mistakes. We were all teenagers once. And knowing that their kids are doing some of the same things, yet they still do it. I just don't understand how parents aren't more, all of them are our kids. We all live in the same community, that kind of thing. They're just willing to say, somehow my kid's better. I don't get that. I never said that. My kids were always mad at me because I didn't say it. Like my daughter always said, I can't believe you don't act like other parents were like, I'm the best kid ever. She wasn't. I wasn't gonna lie, say, oh, honey, you should be getting an A in English. I was the parent who said, you suck in English. You have got to do something about it. So I think that bothers me. As a culture, that's worrisome. Why would somebody do that?
Yeah.
Like when you think about PTO. The reason PTO started was to help all kids. Kids who needed money, who needed lunch, who needed shots, who needed a place to live, and who, and our PTO works very hard to do things, but are we spending enough time doing those things?
Yeah.
I don't think we are sometimes. So.
Today on the show, we have a super special guest. Everyone welcome Jesus Christ. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We have lots of questions to ask you, starting with, what year were you born?
4 BC.
And where did you grow up?
Bethlehem.
So Jesus, tell us, how do people describe you as a leader?
Well, first off, Allie, I'm very peaceful. I really try to connect with the people. I had a strong support group, and most of all, I didn't back down for what I believed in.
Oh no!
Miss, I'll go get that for you.
Thank you, Jesus.
Here you go, ma'am.
Oh, thank you, Jesus. Oh my gosh, your expensive purse. Miss. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I learned it from my good friend Jesus.
Even though Jesus isn't around anymore, his teachings still are, which shows how powerful they were and how great of a leader he truly was.
Some things that worked against Jesus was that everyone has their own belief and that some people didn't agree with the way he was leading, but for the most part, Jesus was a really good leader, and his leadership qualities are still around today.
Thanks for joining.
See you next week.